NSAI Collaborative in Lawrence, Massachusetts. I'm here today with a very special guest. I have Terry Kitchen, who has been in the music industry for a very long time, done some fantastic work with all kinds of performers. He's got several albums out. He's written a novel that is also about music, and an all-around interesting guy, so I'm very glad he's here. How are you doing, Terry?
I'm good, thank you. I would call myself a reasonably special guest.
Reasonably? Okay. You're a reasonably special guest. Because we're all very reasonable people here, and that's good.
And special.
Yeah. Reasonable and special in our own way. Anyway, so where are you from?
Well, I live in the city of Boston. I've been in the Boston area since the early 80s. It's a great music scene. I actually came to Boston from a small town in Ohio and did the classic thing of being in a rock band. You throw all your guitars and amplifiers in the van and make a drive to the big city. And we sort of never looked back. We never got the huge record deal and became the household word that, maybe the Rolling Stones or Hootie and the Blowfish are. But we had a lot of fun. And, and then that sort of morphed into the folk scene, as I got a little older and people sort of went their separate ways in the band. So, it's still a great music town, and spreading out into the burbs, such as Lowell and Lawrence. Here we are in the North Woods, and there's just a great great music scene, and specifically folk music scene. It's a great place to be a singer-songwriter. Mm-hmm.
So, when you were younger, how did you come to music? I mean, where did it start?
Sure, a couple things I'll mention. I'm old enough that I grew up with the Beatles and the Monkees. It was a really fun time for music. The music that was on the radio was really fun. So even if I was 6 or 7 years old, there was reason to want to sit in front of an AM radio and wait until, I'm a Believer or Hey Jude came on.
Right.
So that was one thread. And then I was also going to summer camp in the summers, a YMCA sleepover camp, where they would have campfires and counselors would break out their guitars and play Phil Ochs and Pete Seeger and John Denver songs. And that was a whole other way to sort of get into music. And that was really fun. So actually some of my earliest guitar playing was around a campfire at summer camp.
Wow, that's cool. That's actually similar to my experience. I had the same thing where I went to a summer camp and saw people playing guitars and was like, I could do that.
Yep. And even now, however many years later, there's a great folk festival called the Falcon Ridge Folk Festival. And it's going to be back live this year. We're really looking forward to it. The last weekend of July, it's going to be in Goshen, Connecticut. And we are going to have what's called the Night Owl Song Swap. So if you're going to the festival, even to see the main stage people, if you stay up late and you bring your guitar, we're going to have a song circle that's going to probably go all night, and everybody... It'll be just like, being back at camp.
So all the singer-songwriters who are listening should probably look into that.
Yeah, please. Yeah. The Falcon Ridge Folk Festival. It's a great festival.
Yeah. And so when you... But did you take music lessons early on? Or?
I did to a degree. My mom played a little bit of piano, and she started me on piano lessons, which I hated. And I think really the reason that I hated them was... Again, in the 60s, the show Batman was on television.
Right.
The real Batman, Adam West. None of these fake superhero Batmans. I'm talking about Adam West, and who was terrible, by the way. That's why I'm
I know.
He was truly awful. But it was more campy than adventure. But they would actually show the show 2 nights in a row. So it would be on Wednesday and Thursday nights, and on Wednesday at 7:30, whatever they see the superhero, the crime has been committed, and then at the end of that episode, the superhero, if it's the Joker the supervillain, the Joker or the Penguin or whoever it would be, would get control of Batman and Robin and devise some great way to finally get rid of them. And so they're going to be about to be crushed by a glacier or whatever it might be, and then the announcer says, "Tune in tomorrow night for the exciting conclusion." But my piano lesson was the next night. So I always got to see them, get into these terrible, fixes, but never got to see them rescue themselves and then capture the bad guy. So I trace my dark outlook on the world events to being able to see Batman get in trouble, but never to save the world.
And for those of you who are too young to remember when there wasn't a DVR or a VCR or anything else, it used to be you just had to watch it when it was on, or you missed it.
Well, maybe wait for the summer rerun.
Well, yeah, but then you'd have to know when that's happening,
Right,
and it's all.
Yeah. So anyway, but then. So piano and I did not work out well because, really the problem was I wasn't interested in learning classical music and even the little silly songs they make you to play to learn fingering. What I wanted to do was learn how to play Beatles songs and Monkey songs.
Right.
But then the kids who lived upstairs there were some college students from the local college. It was called Lafayette College. And my father asked one of them to show me some guitar chords, which was really nice. They got me a guitar for Christmas, and the student played a little piano, so he taught me how to play Hey Jude on a piano. And it's like that, that kind of piano I like, to use it as a tool for writing and singing to, but not necessarily try to do the Mozart thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I think that I had the same thing, even though I grew up a generation later. That's how I was learning, was Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles.
Yep.
I mean, it was just, back then, even 10 years after, I mean, they were huge.
Yep.
They still are, but, it's...
And I do think it's a testament to that music that it has survived. My friends have kids whose favorite bands are The Doors and Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Bands, and the idea of when I was growing up of, having a band from 20 or 30 or 40 years before be your favorite band would be like, oh yeah, that Tommy Dorsey orchestra, they sure could swing. I mean, it's fine music or whatever, but it didn't inspire passion. Whereas the first generation of rock and roll, I think, really did inspire, some lasting passion.
Well, I think the big band stuff was something that inspired passion, but they hadn't heard rock and roll yet. I mean,
right.
Benny Goodman's concert at Carnegie Hall was just, it was the same as like the Beatles. It was like people dancing in the aisles, girls screaming, and that was Benny Goodman in the 38, right? So our grandparents and great grandparents were, they were sometimes cool. It's just we don't remember. There's no living memory of it, but yeah. I mean, you can read a writing about Benny Goodman, but more often than not, you read about the Beatles, especially with the new Beatles documentary that just came out. Did you watch that?
I watched some of it, and it was, certainly fun to see them. I think, and the starting point I would say is Peter Jackson, the director who sort of took a second look at the footage and then assembled the more recent documentary, as opposed to the original Let It Be movie that came out back in like 1970.
Right.
I think all of his movies are way too long. Like, if you go to one of his Lord of the Rings movies, it's like, okay, it's a really good story, but do we need to see 20 minutes of the orcs gathering for the big battle and, marching? So, I mean, it's really fun to see them play, but I think it could have been, for me, we don't need to see everything. I mean, there's a reason they invented an editing button. You don't really need to see somebody brushing their teeth or whatever.
Although I feel more sympathetic toward Yoko after seeing it. I do feel that. I think that she got a raw deal based on the movie.
And it was also a very interesting time for them as a band because they'd done everything they could already do. I mean, after Sgt. Pepper's, and they couldn't possibly get any bigger. So really, the question was, how much longer do we want to still be the Beatles? And so they're all kind of grappling with that. And Paul's got Linda, who already had a daughter, Heather. My favorite scene of the whole thing is where Ringo's drumming as the Beatles are rehearsing their songs for the record. And they set Heather up, and she's maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, and give her a set of drumsticks and a little woodblock kind of thing to play along with, and she's sitting right next to Ringo, and everything he does, she does, and she's great. I mean, I hope she pursued her drums because she was really good. But it's very sweet to see, But again, overall, Paul's got a family, John's got Yoko, and he's also got a kid, Julian, from his first marriage. So and George is coming into his own as an artist, and Ringo's married. So it's like, how much longer do we want to put up with being Beatles? Because by that time, they walk out on the street and it's a big deal, And so it's like some of the fun was gone. They couldn't even play live anymore because the crowds were too loud. Mm-hmm. How can you, if people are just going to scream, why bother to have a concert?
Well, nowadays you just blast everybody out of the water.
But. Yeah, I mean, different world, but at that time. So really, we're watching the Beatles decide whether or not they still want to be the Beatles.
At that concert at Shea Stadium, didn't they have like a 50-watt amp or something? It was like...
Oh, there was no way to compete with the crowd, the sound of the crowd.
Right. I mean, that's too big for a concert with a 50-watt amp. I mean, I have a 50-watt amp sitting behind you on the stage. It's not that loud comparatively, to what they have today. But it would be a problem I would like to have. Yes, me too.
But the crowds who come to my shows are just too loud. They just never set it down for the ballads because they're throwing their bras up on the stage and the whole bit.
Right. And we were just discussing. I'm reading Keith Richards' book Life, and more of that. It was really a whole new thing at the time when it was. It was like nobody had heard anything like it before when the Stones came out and when the Beatles came out.
Yep.
And, that's, that made a difference. But then there's the folk revival and that kind of stuff. Oh,
absolutely.
And, that's what spoke to me, too.
And, people still argue about whether or not Bob Dylan, should have actually gotten the Nobel Prize for literature. But really, if you think about it, until Dylan... most of the folk revival was people going back and finding older songs, like the Kingston Trio doing, Shenandoah or whatever. I mean, beautiful songs, but they're songs that are 100 years old. And the whole point was to revive those songs. It wasn't really until Dylan that he started making new folk music. Music that felt like it was timeless, but was new and about current events, and songs like Times They Are A-Changing or whatever. So really what propelled the folk music genre, I think, into where we are now is really the writers like Dylan, and Phil Oakes, and those people who took that old music as a starting point, not just as the finishing point, mm-hmm. and made it new and kept it moving forward.
Yeah, the stuff that like what was his name? What was the guy, the cataloger? What's his name?
Well. Alan Lomax was a real big folk historian.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So Alan Lomax was out with his tape recorder recording people in the hills of West Virginia, and getting all the bluegrass stuff down, getting the sea shanties.
Yeah, the Carter family.
Carter family. Yeah. That was another good documentary, the country music one.
Yeah.
But all that stuff. It's just it's so amazing. When you look at folk music, the variety that you get, because you get that aspect of it. It's history. And it's music of the folk, people who pass everything down orally, right? It was never written. And then finally you're writing it down. And then Dylan, you're right, he wrote songs, but what he wrote, I think, is definitely literature. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
The fact that... at every open mic you go to, somebody's playing a Dylan song.
Right.
I mean, it's really ridiculous how often people play Dylan. Like it's just he's influences everybody.
And I think one of the sort of interesting things about his influence is really because he's somewhat limited as a singer and as a musician. He usually plays pretty simple chords, and he doesn't have like the greatest vocal range. I mean, he was never like a great singer, but like a song like Blowing in the Wind, it's not even a full octave of melody. He's not like a Mariah Carey where the whole point is to hear what an amazing singer she is. Well, that might be true, but nobody else can sing a Mariah Carey song. It may be, one or two other people with that kind of voice. But anybody can sing a Bob Dylan song. And so everybody does,
Right. And, Jimi Hendrix had, he was doing Bob Dylan songs too.
Yeah.
And, Which one did he do?
Well, he did
All Along the Watchtower.
He did a great recorded version, a studio version of All Along the Watchtower, which is interesting because it propels what's a very simple folk song with 3 chords, very repetitious, but through all of Jimmy's guitar vocabulary, it's this incredible journey just of sound, and that sort of brings the story to life. Right. And he also did a great live version. He did Like a Rolling Stone at the Monterey Pop Festival.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But I think, in my opinion, it's justified, the Nobel Prize.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, because also other countries listen to him. I mean, that's the thing. A Nobel Prize is not American, so for us to be arguing about it, it's kind of, the Nobel Committee is made up of writers.
And also going back to that time when, Blowin' in the Wind was probably his first really huge song that, he wrote it, then Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded it, and then after that, everybody recorded it because most of the singers at that time were not songwriters. They were always looking for their next song to sing. So it was only after Dylan and then, James Taylor and then sort of everybody, the thing to do was to write your own songs. But at that time, nobody was doing it. Like bands like the Rolling Stones were cover bands. The Beatles were a cover band, in Hamburg playing R&B tunes to, in strip joints basically, and then started writing their own songs. And George Martin said, "Hey, that's pretty good. Why don't you record that one?" So that became a thing for artists to also become writers. But it used to be a very delineated profession. There's the entertainer over here, and then the guys in the back room at the piano writing songs for them to sing. Elvis never wrote a song in his life, but he was certainly a great entertainer. But now, it's much more. I think we're more attuned to our own being able to give our own perspective on life and what we've experienced in the way we would tell a story, as opposed to depending on a professional songwriter, to do it.
Right. And I mean, you've been writing a lot of great stuff that does
thank
that.
You.
And tell me about your book, though, a little bit. So you wrote a book that's a novel about a rock and roll singer who's not doing so well.
Well, the name of the book is Next Big Thing, and it was really fun to write. And as I mentioned earlier, I moved to Boston in a van with some guys in a rock and roll band. We had played together in high school, and we're playing proms and things, and dying to get out of that little scene in Western Ohio, and not even like the cool side of the state, not where Akron, where Devo was from, and Chrissie Hynde were from, but sort of in the cornfield side of the state. So we knew Boston had a great music scene. There was a band called The Cars here at the time, and they had just opened a studio, and one of their reasons for doing it was so that they could also record other bands, and give other bands sort of a head start. And so that sounded good to us, so we threw everything in the van and came to town. But especially because we were from out of town, we were starting at the very bottom of the pyramid. And on the club scene, and now you're a presenter, yourself with this great space here at One Broadway. It's great to be able to present great music that you enjoy, but part of the deal is you have to get people who are going to bring people in the door. You want to do what you can to make sure there's always a crowd and people enjoy it, and so that it's a good time for everybody. So it was really hard to even get booked as a band unless you already had gone to college in town and could make a few phone calls and get 100 friends to come out.
Right.
So that was also why some of the bands who succeeded. The reason the Beach Boys, this is really true. The Beach Boys, obviously a great band, but the reason that they got successful when they were starting out was the Wilsons were a big family. They had 100 cousins in the surrounding towns, right around that part of Inglewood and in Los Angeles. And so whenever Murray the K or somebody would play one of their songs and call in response for a Battle of the Bands thing, all of their cousins would call in, and so the lines would be flooded with people saying, "Yes, play Little Deuce Coupe by the Beach Boys," and it was because of their cousins were calling in. But it occurred to me, even then, that the Boston scene in the '80s was something special with the Cars and Aerosmith and the Jay Giles Band kind of on top, a great radio station called WBCN that was really getting their music out there, but also all the local bands. They would have a local countdown every week. So if you were a new band with your own record, they might play it, and it was a big boost, and we were lucky enough to have a song catch on and become a #1 record, on BCN. And bands like Till Tuesday, came out of the Boston scene, and the Del Fuegos and Dump Truck, and like many good bands who did, went on to do, some really good work. The Pixies,
right.
The Lemonheads, and there was nothing sort of documenting that scene. So it occurred to me, why not try to tell a story, not from like, Steven Tyler, the Aerosmith view looking down,
right.
but sort of what it was like to be in the middle of that pack trying to fight your way up with all this great music around you and all the different sort of influences. One thing that makes Boston such a great hub for musicians is there's the Berklee School of Music,
right.
where, it attracts world-class musicians from all over the world to come as students, to come as teachers. I actually went to a music school in Los Angeles called the Guitar Institute of Technology, which is kind of like Berkeley West, and it was really fun. Some great players like Larry Carlton,
I know him. Yeah.
who did the guitar solo on the Steely Dan song Kid Charlemagne. Well, he came in and did a workshop, and I got to play the Gibson 335 that he did the Kid Charlemagne solo on.
Wow.
So it's like, so if you're a guitar player, that's like, wow, and great jazz players. Would stop by Ed Bickert, who played with Paul Desmond, who played with Dave Brubeck. These like great musicians. Howard Roberts, who did the great solo on Valerie by the Monkees. All those great flamenco licks. So a lot of great bands like Till Tuesday and the Lemonheads. I thought it would be really fun to give a view of that story from the middle of that pile, all these great bands with all this great music and the different clubs of that time that really hadn't been documented. So it was really fun to write, and it did pretty well. There was a movie that came out around the same time, a documentary about the Rathskeller, and so we got to sort of piggyback on each other's publicity, so that was really fun. We did a great concert at the Johnny D's down in Somerville, late great club, really fun place to play music and hang out. And so my band came, sort of reunited and did a set. The drummer came back from Michigan, and so that was really fun to do. And I'm happy to say I got some good reviews, and a lot of people have told me they enjoyed it. And not just people who were there, but pretty much anyone who's ever been in a band or picked up a guitar and thought about being in a band. And so what it's really about is that relationship, that working relationship within a band, and ways that it can really help, and how you can achieve more and maybe just have more music and wider taste and a wider palette than you can on your own working with other musicians. But
right.
Then also you've got to incorporate all those different viewpoints. And so the main character, Mark, in the story is, in certain ways the leader of the band. In other ways it's kind of a democracy, which makes it even more frustrating if you feel like you're doing all the work and don't get your way. But how to take advantage of that before they kill each other. Will they get enough success to keep going, to make it worth it to keep going before they kill each other? And it's a really close call.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually Terry just told me it was on audiobook.
Yes,
and
also available as an audiobook.
Yeah, I have the Kindle, but I haven't gotten to it yet, and I'm going to do the audiobook immediately, actually, because I can go do that.
And one thing that was fun about it was, since it is the story of a band, there are lots of scenes with songs in them. So aside from writing the book, if there was, there's a scene in the club with this song called Another Saturday Night on the Island of Misfit Toys, or whatever it might be, then I'd stop, pick up my guitar and write the song. So there's actually a song track album, and you get a download code when you buy the book, and so you can also download the songs. You can find the songs on my webpage. So it's really fun. It was really fun to do.
Wow, that's great. Well, we've been having a great conversation, but you play a lot of great stuff. So why don't we hear something? What would you like to do?
Oh, sure. Well, let me do. Got my guitar in my lap, so I'm going to do a song. This is the opening cut off of my most recent release. And the album is called Lost Songs. So, during sort of pandemic times, I had an opportunity to go back and discover some songs that I'd written that I'd kind of forgotten about, that hadn't really fit into, any of my previous albums. And so this is a collection. There are a couple new songs on it, but it's some older stuff as well that it was really fun to go back and rediscover and record. So this is a song that's called Opposite Day.
Cool.
When the cat brought in the paper, it was nothing but good news. Nobody died and nobody cried about who did what to who. I ate a healthy breakfast, was early for work. I didn't lose my temper or call my boss a jerk, 'cause I love my job except they give me too much pay. Opposite day. Then coming home this evening, I heard your favorite song. It made me feel so good, cranked it up and sang along. And I felt sharp all day, 'cause I didn't drink last night. The house did not seem empty, not a pizza box in sight. 'Cause I got your message, you're coming home to stay. Opposite day. On opposite day, the moon is bright till the sun comes up on opposite night. I go to bed and wake up yesterday. Now I'm vacuuming the carpet, just like I'd always do. When you were out carousing and getting home at 2, and I'm sleeping like a baby with the bed all to myself, and I'm laughing at the image of you with someone else, 'cause I know I'm so much better off this way. Opposite day. On opposite day, the moon is bright till the sun comes up on opposite night. Forgive and forget, that's what you'll say. On opposite day, the blind can see. That's how I know you still love me. And dreams come true if you tap your toes and cross your eyes and touch your nose. What's good is bad, what's best is worst, what's happy is sad, and last is first. And love never up and blows away. On opposite day. On opposite day. On opposite day. On opposite day. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a great concept for a song. I'm surprised I don't hear more songs about opposite day. It's a great idea.
Well, thanks. I can't take credit for the idea. I work with kids actually. I work with middle school kids who are always a trip. It's really fun. And there was a TV show on the Nickelodeon channel, which is called, which is sort of the kids' channel. Mm-hmm. And it was called You Can't Do That on Television.
Oh, I remember.
And it was really fun because all the cast members were all kids, and they would have the occasional adult, just sort of playing a role. But it was really the kids who wrote the show and produced the show. And one of their skits was called Opposite Day. And like the kids would be the teacher and the teachers would have to do what the kids tell them and all that sort of stuff. So just sort of applying that concept to somebody's love life.
So a little bit of trivia about You Can't Do That on Television I just learned is that Alanis Morissette was on that. Oh, she got slimed regularly.
Nice.
And she talks about it.
That was one of my dreams, was to slime Alanis Morissette.
Oh, good.
So a way to do that. Good to know.
Yeah, that's how, before she was famous as a singer, she was doing that. That was a great show, actually.
It was really, really fun. And, for as many problems as there are in the world, and there are a lot of them, and, a lot of being a folk singer is sitting around looking at the world going, what's wrong with the world that I can write a song about?
Right.
But, if we can keep it going long enough to turn it over to the kids, and who have a lot of passion and a lot of great ideas and aren't sort of held back by a lot of the preconceptions that we all bring, and I might have a couple years on you, Aaron, but if you look compared to us, next to a bunch of 13-year-olds or 14-year-olds, they have some really unique perspectives and ideas, and I really hope they get the chance to put them into effect.
Yeah, I hope they can manage to put them into effect. It's so hard. I mean, because, that's sort of the pattern. Young people make change, and the older generation resists change, and often it goes back toward the more conservative rather than the change.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm actually pretty hopeful.
Okay, me too. I have a son who's about that age. He's 12. So.
Oh, nice. Great.
Yeah, I hope they can make a lot of change.
Well, I actually, if you don't mind me taking control of the interview,
okay.
I actually have a song that I wrote on Inauguration Day last year when the new administration came into effect and sort of got us successfully out of the previous era, and it's called Eyes of Tomorrow. And I was thinking about my kids, basically, the kids that I work with, and exactly what we're talking about, hoping that they get the chance and they get to see the world with these eyes of tomorrow. So
okay.
I'm doing one more song.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, eyes of tomorrow, don't cry today. Changes are coming, help's on the way. Winter's been brutal on everyone, but I feel the rays of a brand new sun. Oh, eyes of tomorrow, don't lose heart. Sometimes the bottom's just where you start, and you'll grow strong, and you'll grow free. You'll outgrow these chains that drag on me. Oh, eyes of tomorrow, cling to hope. Like vines on a rainbow, strong as rope, to lift us out of hatred's bliss, till color means beauty, not prejudice. So eyes of tomorrow, don't cry today. Changes are coming, help's on the way. We've done our best, now it's your turn to open our eyes to all you'll learn. Oh, eyes of tomorrow, la-da-da. Eyes of tomorrow, la-da-da. Thank you so much.
Sound of one hand clapping against the other hand. Yeah, that's an optimistic one. That's good. We need more of those.
Well, and hopefully not unfounded. I mean, obviously, it's a really complex world, and sometimes, the solution to one problem then leads to another problem. We have all these unforeseen consequences. Like the Green Revolution is great, but there's limits to what you can do with pesticides, and they're killing off all these other, insects and animals, and so everything, we have to take everything into account, and
right.
And I think we need to embrace knowledge and not shy from it.
Yeah, I agree. What happened between you were in a band and you're teaching kids?
Well, this may surprise you, Aaron. I know this is going to be a big shock, but actually, folk singers don't make a lot of money.
Really?
I know it's, but in a sense, that's one thing that's good about it, because when I was in the rock band, there is that sort of dangling possibility that you might actually like have a record that sells 1 million copies or whatever, and then it's all about carving up the pie. And bands, this is true. Some very famous bands broke up because a member felt like they didn't get enough of their songs on the record, and they didn't get their share of the royalties. And there are all these sort of sharks circling the waters about how the money gets divided, and you have to give this percentage to this manager and this booking agent, blah blah blah. But in folk music, there's so little money to be made that the only people who are in it are people who love the music. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually really refreshing to deal with like somebody who books a club like you actually like the music. It's not just about, how many bodies we can get in here to sell how many, Journey tote bags and, whatever it might be. So,
oh, you're giving me some ideas.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. but so it means that the people in that world are really there because they care about the music, and if they can help more people be exposed to the music and, that sort of thing. So it's actually really, really refreshing. So my rock band got to the point where, people were getting married, and it was just more and more work and less joy, if that makes sense. I mean, still on a good night, we'd, play and it'd be great, but there were lots of times where, the drummer would look at the bass player and go like, I'm not going to do this for, very long if we're like still sort of at the bottom of the pyramid. And so, at a certain point we let it go. And I was already writing songs that had stories, that had more narrative in them, where the best place to see them wasn't necessarily at the channel, a rock club with 1,000 bodies who wanted to dance and get drunk and pick each other up. So a place like the Nameless Coffeehouse in Harvard Square, where people actually sat and listened. And I still love to dance. I love rock and roll, and it's really fun to dance, and even playing acoustic music and there's high energy acoustic music, which is really fun. But I want to be able to have that attention. And so, that I can do on the folk world. And so, and I've always loved kids. I have that camp counselor background. And so I do get to like bring my guitar and, songwrite with the kids, which is really fun, and, do music, with them. And it's a great, and in a way it keeps me going because it inspires me. Like I've said, I do feel optimistic about the future, and if we have people who care, who want to pass on, sort of what's good about the world and help kids see beyond like the mass market media stuff where they're just a consumer and it's all about just what they buy, to other things, other values, then I think that's a valuable thing to do. And I think music can be a big part of that.
Yeah. I think it's always been a big part of that. Music drives a lot of things. I mean, even when you go back to the early days of radio, television, where they're doing jingles, or before that, for that matter,
yep.
I think that people always respond to things music has to say.
And before there was such great recorded, possibilities for recorded music, a lot of the music on the radio was live. Like in Nashville, instead of just playing like the top 10 country records over and over, they would have, this hour is going to be hosted by, Bob Wills, and then he's going to have some guests, and they're going to do an hour of live music. And so you got to do this scope. Again, even like a band like the Beatles, they were on the BBC all the time. And they did many songs they didn't write, many songs that weren't on their, official recorded albums. Right. And they're great. I love John Lennon singing, the teddy bear song, to know him is to love him. It's just beautiful, and you'd never hear that on a Beatles record, but it's, it's great to hear.
Yeah. I also liked, when they did Kansas City and that whole, I remember buying one of those, bargain bin Beatles tapes, where it's like all the songs no one knows by the Beatles,
right.
Because they're not by the Beatles. Twist and Shout was on there, but other than that, it was all just, more obscure covers, blues songs, things like that. So, but yeah, I think that I used to listen to old radio shows too, so I'm familiar with some of that. And one of the best live performances on video that I've seen that was on TV too was Spike Jones. You ever watch that?
Nice.
Because the one there's different Spike Jones. This is the old one.
Oh, I know. Oh, no, I know. Absolutely, I know.
Yeah.
To quote Robbie Robertson in Up on Cripple Creek, Spike Jones, I can't stand the way he sings, but I love to hear him talk.
That's right. He's great, and but they all were, having that live performance is something that I think we don't see enough of. Even on when you see a live performance on Saturday Night Live or something like that, it's not the same thing because it's so overproduced at this point.
But there's always been great music and there's always been lousy music. I'm not going to argue strongly that some of the early 60s, bubblegum or whatever it be, would be pretty trashy. And a lot of the, quote, live performances were people going on like American Bandstand and lip syncing to their records,
Right.
So, or even if it was like at the auditorium that night, they would do the same thing. They would play the record and then sing along with their record, But so there's always been a range. So I don't want to, there's always a lot of great music being made and there's always some not so great music.
Yeah,
being
so
made.
why did Milli Vanilli get in trouble for that? I don't know. Well, because they didn't sing on the record at all.
Right, because they weren't, Truth in advertising, I think.
Yeah. But, so there's a lot of interesting things going on lately with music because it's sort of, people won't come to shows as often. What are you doing other than playing here?
Yeah. Well, it is been a hard time the past couple of years, with COVID, and obviously we want everyone to be safe. And folk music tends to draw an older crowd, and so older people tend to have to be more cautious because if they do get sick, they might have a harder time, have a more severe case. So we understand that and respect that. It's great that things are starting to open up. It's great that you're able to have live music here and some of the other venues. I'm actually going to be playing on Saturday, March 5th down at the Somerville Armory, which is a great, another great listening room with my friend Sanya Mack, who's in the Porch Party Mamas, and a great duo called Ginger Ibex, where we'll trade songs in the round like what you do here on your songwriter nights. And so I'm looking forward to that. But one thing that has helped fill the void is being able to perform online, if it's like via Zoom or Facebook Live or whatever the platform may be. And it's great that I know that here you're able to actually even broadcast some of your live shows where there'll be live music in the room, and then get it out there on the internet as well for people who aren't able to be here, and that's fun. But it is, it's not as carefree. It's a more challenging time. And music, a big part of music is social. But luckily I've been still able to record, and recording is something which is kind of ironic that as the technology has developed, is you can do it in stages. And you don't have to be in the same room. So, for instance, a song I hope we get to play that I've recorded recently called Crane's Ledge. It has some great musicians on it. Eric Kilburn is a really good mandolin player, added a track. Susan Levine, who's one of my favorite songwriters and great singer, has this sort of like Appalachian kind of twang in her voice, and that I thought, that'd be awesome on this song. And so, she was happy to sing it, which was great. But we weren't in the same room. We were like 50 miles apart, when they recorded it. So that's something we can still do, despite, whatever challenges of COVID. So, that's a good thing that can happen. But hopefully that, as more and more people are vaccinated and there's more herd immunity, this will fade. And it's just something that we have to deal with, just like people getting a smallpox or polio vaccine or whatever, where if you get that vaccine, you're good. You don't have to worry, but it's important to get the vaccine because there's nothing worse than something like measles, where some people, for whatever reason, have stopped feeling like they need to vaccinate, and then there is an outbreak, and then kids get it, and then they become susceptible to these more challenging diseases later on. So we have to pay attention, but if we do our homework and we trust the best science, I think that we'll be able to move forward from here and be able to enjoy playing folk music together in the same room,
right?
And or going out to dance, all those great things that are social things.
You want to play Crane's Ledge?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to let people hear it. And again, this was recorded sort of in different studios all over Massachusetts, but there is a Crane's Ledge in Hyde Park, which is a neighborhood in Boston. And the reason that I wrote the song is it's under consideration for development. And it's this great actual rock formation with some woods on top. And it's one of the few urban areas of woods which are really important for cooling the environment. So right now it's covered with trees. And if that was to get developed and those trees were to go, then that whole area of Hyde Park wouldn't get the benefit of the shade and the increased oxygen and the flow of the cool air coming down from the heights. So hopefully we can save it.
Well, let's hear a song and maybe we can.
Was the depth of the depression. Everyone was on the edge of ruin. Desperate men do desperate things that even they can't believe they're doing. His wife was home nursing there first, and the rent was in arrears. When his friends Jake and Tommy said, "We got a little plan for you to hear." That night a stick of dynamite blew the vault at the Reedville Bank. 3 men with heavy satchels were seen crossing Hyde Park Ave. The sirens came screaming down Blue Hill, so no one got back to sleep. Witness said they headed for the trail where the woods got steep. Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge. One false step and you're over the edge. It's a long way down, so angels fear to tread those rocks high atop Crane's Ledge. The sergeant in charge said, may as well wait until first light. They won't get fire on foot in the middle of the night. But the chief screamed, get moving, the mayor's got $1 million in that safe. And nobody breathes till every last penny's back in place. So the men grabbed their torches and fanned out all across the rim, kicking every tree trunk, every skunk weed, every pudding stone they can. Found 3 charred satchels, but no, not a single dollar bill. And tied to a pine was a rope hanging over the hill. Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge. One false step and you're over the edge. It's a long way down, so angels fear to tread those rocks high atop Crane's Ledge. Well, Jake and Tommy liked to drink at the beer, and they could not keep quiet. They each got 10 years, but on one point they were silent. fingered my father as the lookout man that night. Now I'm building my mansion right here in the broad daylight of Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge. One false step and you're over the edge. It's a long way down, so angels fear to tread these rocks high atop Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge. One false step and you're over the edge. It's a long way down, so angels fear to tread these rocks high atop Crane's Ledge. Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge, Crane's Ledge.
I know you didn't play it live, but clapped anyway.
Well, thank you.
It's not very often you get applause for your CD. So tell me about the song.
Sure. So it's sort of a combination of things. I mean, there is that historical place. There really is a Crane's Ledge that's right now is being threatened by development. But a lot of people don't know that hunk of land because it's in kind of a obscure part of town. So it's kind of like the Staten Island of Boston. If it was, and it's also an area of a lot of people of color. And unfortunately, one of the things that tends to happen is that because people of color generally aren't as connected politically maybe, or don't have as many resources, that they, developers or, other people feel like they can take advantage of that. And so you find a lot of more questionable uses of land next to neighborhoods of color. So I think it's really important that we recognize that it's not just, Back Bay that it should have shade trees. It's not just like the ritzy places, but everybody needs a good quality of life. So a place like Hyde Park that's full of working class people of all diverse backgrounds needs, the shade and the cool air and the better quality of life that having a really nice piece of woods locally available, as they deserve it as much as anybody else. But then in terms of telling an interesting story, there are a lot of folk songs out there that are just like, yeah, save the trees, but I didn't really want to write another Save the Trees song.
Right.
So it's very close to where Mayor Tom Menino, who was the previous mayor one generation ago, who was a very powerful figure, lived very close to there. And again, if he was alive, I bet this wouldn't even be under discussion. He'd say no, and it then wouldn't happen, Mm-hmm. But so the idea of, to me, trying to get a story to let people know about this hunk of land. So there have been some great unsolved mysteries and robberies in Boston. The most famous one being the one at the Gardner Museum, where out there's still these amazing, like, imagine a Rembrandt painting that nobody knows where it is because some guys came to the museum and stole it in the middle of the night. Well, here's this bank robbery where there's this missing fortune. Well, what if it's buried at the top of Crane's Ledge?
Yeah.
So, I just felt like it needed a story.
Right. Well, it sounded great.
No, thank you. And it was really, really fun to put together. Bass player playing upright, Don Barry, did a great job on the sort of that kind of bluegrassy, thunky, kind of rockabilly bass. And always nice to hear Susan sing, and Eric did a nice job.
Yeah, I heard Susan in the background.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
So do you want to play something else live, too?
Yeah, that would be awesome. So a couple years ago, I put out a CD called Rubies in the Dust. And it's kind of an interesting collection. It has some live tracks. It has some cover versions. Most of the time, I tend to record songs that I write. But I've been invited to do some cover versions on different compilations. Like people did a tribute album to the Rolling Stones on Low Budget Records. I was invited to do a track, or a Bob Dylan tribute album. So I did a track for that. And so I had these kind of tracks that are kind of spread out over these different compilations but never collected. So I collected them onto the Rupees in the Dust CD and included some live versions of some favorite songs of mine that I wrote. So this is called Life is Hard Enough.
All right. Sounds great.
So this woman left her lights on and her car wouldn't start. I had jumper cables in my trunk, but I was late and it was raining. I was wearing my good suit. I said, sorry, but I have to run. I rolled back up my window and I started to pull out, and I heard my conscience whisper, turn this car around. Life is hard enough, time is short enough, hearts are scarred enough. From the hurting that we do, love is scarce enough, joy is rare enough, we're all strong enough to help each other through. Today you might need me, tomorrow I'll need you. So let's not turn away, life is hard enough. There's a family at church, a father and two girls. The mother lost her fight this year. My wife's got the youngest in her Sunday school class. Now every lesson's crystal clear. We can't stop bad things from happening, we can't even know why. We can give each other courage and comfort when we cry. Life is hard enough, time is short enough, hearts are scarred enough. From the hurting that we do, love is scarce enough, joy is rare enough, we're all strong enough to help each other through. Today you might need me, tomorrow I'll need you. But let's not turn away, life is hard enough. And maybe it's the little things that make it all worthwhile, those simple acts of kindness that make each other smile. Life is hard enough, time is short enough, hearts are scarred enough. From the hurting that we do, love is scarce enough, joy is rare enough, we're all strong enough to help each other through. Today you might need me, tomorrow I'll need you. So let's not turn away, life is hard enough. So let's not turn away, life is hard enough. Life is hard enough. Life is hard enough. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
That was great. I remember that from the show you did here.
Oh, yeah.
That was good.
And we made the decision, the editorial decision, to have a little better sound in the room, to turn off the heater blower. And that, like, unfortunately, halfway through that song, that was when my hand decided to tell me, okay, I'm cold, I can't stretch that far anymore. So I apologize for the...
Oh, well.
the clam hand.
It sounded good, though.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, Terry, when you write songs, how do you approach it? Are you, because you're pretty prolific. I mean, do you sit down and have a specific time to write or place, or how do you do it?
Well, I have, written by now. I have written, a number of songs, but they sort of tend to be different. Each one is unique. One might start like, say, the last, The Life is Hard Enough. I was just playing around with that chord progression and sort of that technique, and that kind of, I had that, and then had this situation happen where, I was making and doing some errands, and a woman needed a jump start on a rainy day, and I was like really late and stressed, and all that. And it's like, what do you do? What do you do? Does it, like, I know that we need to be nice to each other, but does it have to be me? That kind of feeling. But then you realize, well, but if it's not you, you don't know anybody else is going to step forward, and then that person could really be, in a hardship, So you can do something little that could really help someone a lot,
Right.
So how can you say no? And so I was able to, that moment sort of felt like that music. So I just sort of put them together at that point, and that was the song. Right now, I'm actually working on a group of songs for a musical, and that's a whole other type of challenge. So I'm getting to know the characters and getting to know sort of the points in the story where it's kind of like not enough for them just to say it. They have to sing it.
Right.
And so that's an interesting process. And so that's sort of like a batch of songs together. And then if you get into like something like that, then you can't have too many songs that are similar in one way. You have to like make sure the different characters have a song, and then how are those songs going to be different? And so that's just a whole lot of like mechanical choices like tempo, key, feel, type of thing. But it's also really fun because it's an excuse to write different types of songs, rather than just, here's yet another kind of depressing song in E minor about yet another world issue that, isn't going the way that you want it to go. So, everyone's different, but it is important to have, I think, some discipline, so you make time. And one thing that I do is I belong to a songwriters group that every month we get together. So if I don't have something on that, like by the end of that month, I feel like, I'm like playing hooky from school. I haven't done my homework, and I feel, stressed and bad about it. So I want to, make sure I have some time in that month to be creative. And it's, there's so many things, life can get complex, and we all have different things that we deal with. But it's important to make time, so that that art can come out of you, because it won't come
Right.
if you don't make the time.
Yeah, I find that I struggle more with it, finding the time to do it. And you're right, you have to just carve it out.
Right, because it's not something that it's like, okay, well, you need to get your taxes done by April 15th, and you need to mow the lawn before it gets so tall that you need a machete, or shovel the snow, or whatever it might be, or get to work, or, go out and buy, groceries. But so something that's as nebulous as writing a song is going to be at the bottom of the list, maybe, but it actually could be at the very top of the list of things that make you happy.
Right.
So it's important in that way. And I know that I feel incomplete if I don't feel like I'm being creative in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to be songwriting, and it could be even like working with kids in some way, or some other aspect of my life. But I feel like I need to feel like I'm moving forward in some way, sort of as an artist, as a person, and not just sort of like checking off the things on my things to-do list.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Yeah.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
There's a song here that I just really am curious about. It's You and Me and the Kama Sutra. I really want to hear that because it sounds like, from the description, like Song for a Winter's Night by Gordon Lightfoot.
Okay.
but it certainly seems like a different take on a winter's night when you're inside. So can we hear that one? Do you know it?
I'm not going to be able to do it just as sort of sitting here with just my guitar. It's kind of a swing tune.
Oh, is it?
It's on my most recent album, which is called Lost Songs, and it is kind of fun. And any song called "You and Me" in the Kama Sutra, but it's basically like. Been snowing all day and it won't let up. There's nothing to do 'cause the power's off, and sort of goes like, here we are that you can't watch TV. Like, what can you do during a blizzard when you're being snowed in?
Kama Sutra.
There you go. It's like if you're with the right person and, you can light a candle and get some, oil or whatever and sort of work through the whole Kama Sutra. So it did pretty well on the radio. It was fun. I think people mostly played it in blizzard situations. but thanks for asking. And it was really fun to write a swing tune, write a song with that feel. So I encourage you guys to try to find it online or on the album or on my website or whatever.
Well, I'm looking forward to listening to this Lost Songs because it sounds like.
Well, thanks.
I haven't heard it yet. So
yeah, I think that generally speaking, I'm a relatively serious person and serious songwriter. So when it comes to choosing songs for my albums, I tend to think about what song is kind of most important to get out there in the world or could maybe do some good or maybe people might find some resonance with. But I also write some pretty stupid, silly songs that tend to not have a place, on those kinds of albums. So on Lost Songs, there's actually a song called Don't Kick the Cat.
Yes, I saw that.
Which is a polka, It was really fun to write a polka, and I think it came out really well, but it wouldn't really fit onto your basic Terry Kitchen album, so it's nice that it finally had a place. Or like You and Me in the Kama Sutra, which I think is, sort of a fun idea, but it may not be, wouldn't have fit onto the album before, which is really a suite of songs about a friend of mine who passed away.
Oh.
So that, but it's nice that it found a home. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So, what would you like to play right now?
Sure. Well, I actually just had a recording session with my friend Jackie Damsky, who's a really talented violin player, and I invited her to play on this song, which is kind of a bossa nova, and it's called "If You Want Me to Write You a Song." And I won't tell you any more of the story than that, but I hope that you enjoyed listening to it, and it's really fun to get to have Jackie play on the track.
All right.
Write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. If you want me to write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. First we have to fall just a little in love, just enough to make me wonder if you'll be the one I'll come home to in the middle of the night. Fingers sore, throat raw from playing in some backroom dive. But you'll wake up and make it all alright. If you want me to write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. If you want me to write you a song, that all you have to do is break my heart. We'll walk in the rain and talk all night, and the sex will be amazing. But soon enough, you'll hear a voice whisper from the back of your brain. If I love you half as much as I love this guitar, will I ever change? So if you want me to write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. If you want me to write you a song, said all you have to do is break my heart. I'll ask what's wrong, you'll shake your head, but I'll know what's the matter. We'll have a big fight, then take it all back, then make the best love yet. We'll say all the right things, wear kid gloves, but it just won't be the same. And I wake up alone again. Same night, I'll write it all down to chords so bittersweet. You'll love that song more than you love me. So if you want me to write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. If you want me to write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. If you want me to write you a song, all you have to do is break my heart. Well, thank you. And on behalf of the band.
Yeah, Jackie sounded great on that.
Yeah, she's a really talented player, and it's I've known her for a while, so it's been really fun to occasionally write a song that works to have her on.
How many albums do you have?
Oh, it depends a little bit on how you count, because I did have my time with Loose Ties, the rock band I was with, but Lost Songs is my 13th solo album. Yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
Well, it just means I'm stubborn, I think, is really the main thing. And that I do, every once in a while I write a song and I feel like, I just want to get it out there. And, it's great to play live, and I always, enjoy playing in front of people and whatever the situation might be. But, it's great that we have this network of radio stations that play folk music, all across the country. We're really blessed here in the Boston area with WUMB and some of the other college stations that, make a point of playing folk music. But there's stations like that all across the country and the world, and especially now in the internet age, you can find a folk show in Germany, and it's really fun to know that a song that I played or a song that I wrote is getting played in New Zealand, and something about it strikes the interest of a DJ down there. So that's kind of cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's amazing how everything's become worldwide, really, even though we're local still, but you can reach many more people. So
yeah, I think it cuts both ways a little bit, because it's nice to have sort of that hometown crowd, or that sort of like rooting for you as well.
Right.
So it's really important, I think, to remember kind of where you're from and help support the local scene. I mean, that's one thing that's really been too bad about COVID is, it's been tougher to just get to hear other people and hear what they're doing and go out and support them. And, I have some friends who are, some great artists. Like you got to hear when I was playing here a couple weeks ago with my friends, Mark Stepikoff and Chris Levanter. It was like really fun to get to hear them play.
Right.
And so it's really nice to be able to go out and support the music that you want to support. I'm looking forward to getting to do more of that again.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be back here before too long. So you want to do one more song?
Yeah, I would love to. I've been lucky enough to, find a great romantic partner. After many failed attempts, after many failed attempts for one reason or another, and but this goes out to my lovely wife Cindy. let me just check that chord for a while, because she would want it to be in tune. And this is called First Kiss Feels Like Home. Ah, there we go. The secret to tuning guitar is you find the one string that's out and then tune the other 5 to that.
That works.
Yeah. Just takes longer.
Right.
It won't be like in the movies, with fireworks exploding like the 4th of July. No violin crescendo, no wobbly knees or stars in your eyes. It'll just sneak up out of nowhere, but you'll know it in your bones when that first kiss feels like home. Now you might think you're a drifter, a restless heart, not looking for love. The pull of the moon keeps you moving on to the next, and you never look back. But you'll hold still in the moonlight and forget the urge to roam when that first kiss feels like home. And I can't tell you why, after all the cowgirls you've kissed, one finds her way straight to your heart and turns it on like a switch. Well, you don't have to believe me, no reason yet why you would believe one moment could change you, make you feel more than you ever could. But don't say I didn't warn you when you're falling like a stone, and that first kiss feels like home. Man, you'll never know how she did it, but you'll know it in your bones when that first kiss feels like home. When that first kiss feels like home. When that first kiss feels like home. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Terry, and I appreciate you coming over here to Lawrence. And,
Always a pleasure. And I'm so happy that, that One Broadway is happening here, and there's great to have live music right in the heart of downtown Lawrence, Massachusetts. And Lawrence, I mean, as you know, and I'm sure many of your listeners know, has this really proud history as one of the early manufacturing centers of the country, and one of the really important places in the American labor movement. The whole, bread and roses mill worker phenomena that Lawrence and Lowell and these New England mill towns were so important in that movement.
Right.
So it's really great to be here.
And we're in a mill building, so
there you go.
Very historic.
And now it's a music building.
Right. It's becoming music and art. So, and you said you were going to be playing next.
Yeah, on Saturday, March 5th, in 2022, depending on when you're hearing this.
Yeah.
At the Somerville Armory. It's called officially the Center for Arts at the Armory, but they have a great cafe with a great live music series called the Somerville Songwriter Sessions.
Right.
And I will be there with my friends Senya Mack and Ginger Ibex, so it should be a great evening.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more of you, and I wanted to let everybody know that this week we are having some events at One Broadway Collaborative. We have Zoe Levitt bringing Pratik and Gabriella Simpkins to play Songwriters in the Round. And then on Saturday, we have the Women in Music group, which includes Linda Marks, who organizes it, plus Jan Luby, Roberta Lamb, and Heart Sound Voice. They're going to be here. And then we have the Underdog Showcase, which is going to be several, meaning like 10 or 12 artists.
There's no need to fear. Underdog is here.
That's right. But it's going to be more of a hip-hop show. It's going to be pretty cool. There's going to be a lot of people here. We've already sold half the tickets, and we'll hopefully sell out. So if you want to get those tickets, that show is actually on Eventbrite. So you can look for Underdog Showcase at One Broadway Collaborative. So that's about it for this episode. And this has been Terry Kitchen at One Broadway Collaborative. I'm Aaron Tornberg, and everybody have a great week.
All right. Thanks for listening.